All right, and welcome back to the channel. So this is part 2 of my GEEKOM GeekBook X14 Pro and X16 Pro review process. Again, this is not sponsored. I do not have a script or talking points from GEEKOM. I purchased these with my own money in a venture to kind of kickstart my channel and actually do kind of the stuff that I love to do, which is review tech. These are brand new offerings from GEEKOM. The unfortunate part, I guess, for me is that these are running the Intel Core Ultra 9 and the Ultra 5 processors. And in this week, Intel released their Ultra X9 or 9X and the Ultra 5X or X5, which has their upgraded ARC integrated GPUs. And I am now, unfortunately, jumping on these a generation behind. Boohoo to me. But this has been my daily driver computer for the last week, over a week now, where I have done everything that I've needed to do for a Windows system on this computer. All right, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. This is actually my second attempt at filming this. I'm using the X14 Pro. My wife was using the X16 Pro, and this is just my review of how I've been able to utilize this machine in my daily workflow. Kind of a quick recap. This is a 14-inch, 2.8K OLED displayed, 2.2 pound. I'm going to call it an ultrabook because this is definitely a performance productivity style machine, not a gaming machine. And then here I have the X16 Pro. This is a 2.5K IPS display. And I was actually asked, and yes, this is a very high gloss display, the OLED. And the 16-inch is a matte display. These are flagship machines from GEEKOM. This is their first attempt at laptops, so I really wanted to get on the cutting edge floor of what they are doing. These are using the Intel Core Ultra, so this is the Ultra 9, this is the Ultra 5 processor. This is my first experience with the Ultra processors. I do typically stick with high-end machines, so i7 and above. My previous machine was a Dell XPS 13, i7, 1195, whatever processor. And my editing computer is the Asus ProArt i9, 12th gen with the dedicated GPU. But again, those are, very specific purpose-driven machines. This has completely replaced my Dell XPS. My Dell XPS is gone. So as far as what I've actually done on this machine, this has been my daily driver from everything from emails, watching content, getting on social media, using AI models like ChatGPT, Gemini. All that has been handled by this machine. I have some notes for myself to reflect on. These are just questions that I've, wrote to reflect on, but this is all my opinion. Again, there's no sponsorship or anything here. Real big thing is the keyboard and trackpad. The keyboard itself is fantastic. Keyboardly has a pretty standard, the QWERTY keyboard. Control function placement is where it should be, and not like the Lenovo's where sometimes they're reversed, which you can change that in firmware. It does have that Copilot key. One of the things that I did like that Windows is now doing is this Copilot key is assignable. So actually I assigned that to the ChatGPT client because that is what I pay for. There's no the arrow key business here, shift, enter, full size enter key. All this is well placed. Function row. The one thing I don't like is when you do push the function button, it automatically locks versus hold, push, and then release. And then it goes back to the whatever function. No, it's as soon as you push it, it locks no matter what. So that I did not like. Other than that, all the basic functions are there. I will say that my wife did make comment on the X16. So this is the X16 Pro full-size keyboard plus the keypad here. Now this was a funny thing with the keypad is if you have any experience with one of these 9 keys, no dedicated enter key. So that was a big kind of adjustment or point of adjustment, because if you I don't know if it's just me or if this like 9 key, 10 key, whatever you call it, is standard and this is just not standard, but that kind of threw us off. And then also this trackpad, although it is very big and you can, the trackpad size on both the 14 and the 16 are nice and big, it does not have that kind of force touch that we've kind of gotten used to now with modern trackpads. You have to push at the bottom to get that right click and left click. There is no click anywhere else. Now, if you enable tap to click, that kind of solves that little problem. But if honestly you're coming from one of these other modern hardware systems where they've already adopted that kind of haptic force click, this kind of old-fashioned now click can kind of throw you off, especially if you've been already used to that. Again, function key, if you push it, it locks instead of being able to push it and then it just automatically turning off. No, you click it and it enables it, you use the function row, and then you have to click it again to switch back. The displays were incredible on these machines. That 2.8K OLED display that I've been using on the X14 is beautiful. It is a glossy display. It does not actually look like glass. If you look very carefully, it's probably not visible on the camera, but it kind of looks like a plastic kind of coating, because I don't know if you if I can describe it, but like the clear coat on a car is not perfectly smooth, but it has some like little dimples or something. It kind of makes me feel like it's plastic and not glass, and then I would assume so because there's really no weight on this machine. So thinking about it, I am very highly suspicious of how much plastic that they actually use in this machine. It does say that this is a magnesium alloy. I know that magnesium alloys are very light. The Lenovo X1 carbons use magnesium instead of like something that could be a little bit heavier like aluminum, right? So it is incredibly light, but at the same time, the monitor itself or the screen does not add any weight either. Other than that, I did not experience any kind of eye strain because I am home right now taking care of my son. A lot of times I'm just dragging this computer around with me onto the sofa, into the room. At night when he's sleeping, I'll be there in the room next to him sleeping, and I'll have the screen very dim. I'll make it the screen very warm so it's very gentle on the eyes. I have not experienced any eye strain. My wife has said that compared to her LG Gram, that the screen is significantly brighter and clearer, and she does not feel like she has to squint or have any kind of eye strain in her daily workflow. So we have no complaints about the screens. They are very, very good screens at this point. Regarding thermals and noise, these do have internal fans. You can hear them blowing when they are under load. Now, the way that I actually got to get this under load is I do a very clean install of Windows right at the beginning. I like to put as minimal bloat on these machines as possible. So I have a clean Windows 11 image that I load. I completely format the hard drive, remove all the partitions, and copy a new version of Windows onto it. Now, if you've ever done that because of the drivers or whatever it may be, it does run warm when it's doing that, and you can hear the fans kind of kick up as it's like installing its OS and all that stuff. Other than that, I did install Whisper AI, which it's an AI transcription model. So I take meeting notes, recordings, and put it into Whisper and have it transcribe everything so that I can put it into an LLM and I can make minutes, or I can draft note scripts or anything like that. And those AI models, because this doesn't have the dedicated GPU, it does run on the CPU, which was not too bad. It almost really did like a minute for minute recording. So if it's a 3-minute recording, it took about 3 minutes to transcribe the whole thing. So that wasn't bad. The chassis itself did not get warm or uncomfortable to the touch. The fans were very much effective in blowing out any of that hot air, keeping the computer relatively cool. I didn't feel any uncomfortable situations, especially when carrying it or having this sat on my lap while I'm on the sofa or while I'm in the room. It was very comfortable, very cool. There was never a point where I was kind of alarmed of how warm this thing would get, even on like the palm rest area here, typically where the fans or the heat pipes are. Next thing is battery life. The one thing that I do worry about with my mobile computers is the battery, because I don't want to have to carry around a large block charger or anything like that. The nice, beautiful thing about these machines is because they are running like lower power CPUs, the 65-watt fast charger that it comes with can charge this from 50 to 90% in about 30 minutes or so is what I've noticed. I could sit with this all day doing just normal tasks, so not trying to run any AI models, doing any kind of cloud computing, right? So writing my documents, using Notion, having Obsidian open, doing a lot of browser tabs and everything. I would probably in a day lose about 40% battery. I've only had one interesting quirk where I was on the sofa. I'm not sure if the battery was already low, and remember it being around 52%, and the screen shut off on me and the laptop wouldn't turn back on until I plugged it in. But when I plugged it in, it still had battery. Like it was still at 54 or 62%, something like that. It was unusual. I think maybe it went into some kind of weird hibernation mode, but that occurred only one time while I was sitting with this machine. Other than that, I've never had battery anxiety. I was able to go through a full 8-hour day from start to finish, doing Zoom calls, doing notes, watching media, anything that I would do on my normal day, and not have to worry about the battery. That's been one of the nice things about these Intel Core Ultra CPUs, or even the Ultra 5 CPU, is that it has pretty efficient battery usage. Another positive is that it does have a fairly large battery. I believe the X14 has a 72 watt hour battery, and the X16 has a 77, 78 watt hour battery, something like that. And it definitely shows in that there is an all day battery life, and I don't see any like very significant power drains. Another thing is the standby mode. I'm always wary when I close the computer, but I still see the standby light on. That's always kind of gets me. The Lenovo's do it too, where the little red dot on the cover is on to just remind you that it is on. But I didn't see too much significant power drain either with it being in standby mode, maybe 10% overnight. I don't know, that could be a lot, but it wasn't enough where I, closed it, forgot about it for a little while, came back and it was dead. I did not have that experience with this machine. So talking about ports and what it the practicality of the machine. It does have a full-size HDMI. It has the two USB 4 ports, and the great thing is it does have a full-size USB-A port, which I did use. I still use a headphone jack. I have some Sony headphones that I have wired into the device. I use that some nights when I'm actually editing, so it was very handy to have the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. The manual toggle for the webcam, I didn't utilize it just because this computer does not have the IR face recognition camera, so I didn't feel like the camera was turning on randomly trying to like detect my face, that I needed to turn it off. It has a dedicated fingerprint reader. As far as design of the computer, the 14-inch, and this is one of the things that my wife brought up, the 14-inch does have a ledge here, a cutout, so it does allow for a very clean grab of the lip here to do a one finger open. And then the dedicated fingerprint button is here, which it does have that kind of captive memory, so you can push it to turn the computer on and it'll store your fingerprint, so that way when it comes to the login screen, it'll log in directly. Now, the one complaint that my wife had is that when she goes to open the 16-inch and she tries to grab that ledge, it does not have a dip here. The whole thing is uniform, so it does have enough of an overhang here that you can actually kind of like, there is something to grab, but it's not as prevalent as the 14-inch where it is just there. So that was a complaint that she had on the 16-inch over the 14-inch, is that it just, and because it's so light, even if you try to put some weight behind it, it's just running away from you. You have to grab it right at that spot to open it. Okay, so continuing on ports, as far as the ports are concerned, the X14 does come with a dongle included, which had a gigabit port Ethernet attached to it. That did become useful at the beginning when I was doing the initial setup of this machine, because doing the clean install of Windows did not have all the drivers that this machine uses. So I had to physically plug in the internet for it to run Windows Update and get those software or those hardware drivers downloaded to get this machine running back like normal, which was a little bit annoying. But when GEEKOM has to source out the hardware for this machine, you can't expect them to be using the most popular, maybe more expensive pieces of hardware, so they have to source out the different pieces. So after it got booted up and I went to GEEKOM's website to download the drivers, I got this computer working with no issues. So the included dongle was useful in having the Ethernet port. Other than that, the added USB-A ports and the pass-through power was a nice to have, not necessarily a need to have, just because this actually has ports available, including that full-size USB-A port, which was helpful when I was here working on my server and needed to flash some drives so that I can load software on there. So definitely did not feel lacking in port selection. Having that micro SD card reader on the 16-inch was, again, a nice to have, just because most modern cameras now, like I'm using the DJI line of cameras, which all use micro SDs, so it'll go right directly into this camera. But maybe a full-size SD card reader would have been more useful, because I do have my DSLRs. Some of the video cameras still use full-size SD cards, and those are nicer to have than the micro SD card reader on this machine. So that goes on to the next topic of the software and stability. I did not experience any crashes using these machines. I did try to, I used some debloat tools. I did some like developer tools. I tried building some software. Like I loaded Ollama CPP onto this thing and used it to build a Ollama model for this machine particularly. So I was trying to get it to use the Intel internal GPU, doing all those kind of projects. I had no issues with stability of the actual software. Where I do have to say I had a little bit of a hiccup is when I tried to do that clean install of Windows on this machine. I did have to go to GEEKOM's support page to download all the drivers necessary for this machine. They did not get picked up automatically from Windows Update, just like, let's say, my Dell would have. That is not necessarily a problem because GEEKOM did make it very easy to get those drivers. But if you did not have the knowledge of needing to go and get those drivers, or knowing that those were not automatically populated on this machine, it could be some time before you even noticed that like the MPU is not working or anything, just because of the lack of drive, or the fingerprint reader would not function, and the Windows security would recognize the fingerprint reader as an external device versus an internal device, and you would have to enable or allow permission for external fingerprint readers to be recognized as login devices, which was something that I had a problem with at the beginning, trying to figure out why it wasn't allowing me to enroll my fingerprint. If you go straight off of the image from GEEKOM, which they do make available, like their recovery disk, all those drivers are preloaded on that and you don't have any issues. And the software that does come installed on the GEEKOM is not necessarily bloated. They do have their own kind of performance tweak software on there. I didn't use it because I did the clean install and I did the whole debloat from Windows. So I am using it as bare as possible, which I have had no problems with. This has been incredible, my day-to-day machine. And of course, this is running full Windows 11 Pro. So that is important for me because of the type of environment where I work. They require that the hard drive be encrypted. So this has BitLocker since it is Windows 11 Pro. And I can set this device to be a remote desktop, to be accessed, which can be important for your workflow. So the fact that I came already pre-licensed with Windows 11 Pro was a huge plus. Just going with this machine on my day-to-day, I honestly am going to continue to hang on to this machine for now. I have already gotten rid of my Dell XPS, so there's no going back to that anyways, but the screen is beautiful. The weight is exactly what I've been looking for. The size of it, the way I can just palm this computer in my hand, throw it in a bag. I can put it in a sling and not necessarily worry about it. One of the things that I've noticed going out to like Starbucks or coffee shops is that more and more places are getting rid of plugs. So I can't just go into a coffee shop and plug it into the wall. I don't have to worry about that with this machine because the battery life on it seems that I can, as long as I can sit in a cafe for, that battery will last. It's not gonna die on me mid workflow. Now, not saying that I'm gonna be sitting there playing games on this machine because it's not necessarily a gaming PC. You can do light gaming. What I can stand is maybe some Stardew Valley, but I'm definitely not gonna be playing like Hogwarts Legacies or some Cyberpunk on this machine, even though I'm pretty sure it's capable. So for taking it out, having a computer that can be with me all day and not having to worry about the battery, this is definitely my go-to at the moment. This is incredibly lighter than my M1 Max MacBook Pro, even though it is a 14-inch as well. I can feel the difference. And so I gravitate towards the GEEKOM GeekBook on a daily basis more so than I do with my actual MacBook, that I am actually working on creating like a headless Mac Studio that I can just access remotely from this laptop, just because of how light it is. Even though I want to take advantage of some of that computing power, I want to carry this around with me. Who would I recommend this for? Like I said, this is definitely falling into that ultrabook category. So Dell XPSs, Inspirons, the HP Envies, or right now the GEEKOM GeekBook, or even the LG Gram. We did weigh the 16-inch LG Gram versus this GEEKOM X16. This GEEKOM is about 250 grams heavier than the Gram, but the 14-inch is right at that 2.2 pounds. So who would I recommend this computer for? It's definitely a work computer. It's for students who want something absolutely lightweight and can throw it into their book bag and not worry about it. This is something that I will definitely be taking to work with me because I do a lot of projects on the side of what my day-to-day on the floor work is. I'm a member of many committees. I go to conventions and conferences, so this is definitely something that is lightweight that I can throw into my backpack and take to conferences with me, take to conventions with me, take it with me on a day-to-day and not feel the weight of the actual machine, because I can definitely feel the weight of the MacBook Pros in my backpack, but this is significantly lighter and definitely easier for me to carry. I am not gravitating towards the 16-inch. I am kind of stuck on these 14-inch ultrabooks. That is my sweet spot. That's where I like to be. The resolution of the screen, I have no issues with seeing any of the text clearly. I don't see any fuzziness or anything like that. No strange scalings or resolutions with that 2.8K display. The OLED panel is beautiful, so I have no issues there. So is this a must-have? I would definitely lean more to the X14 Pro. Unfortunately, the things with the 16 Pro, it's those little things with the keyboard, the trackpad that just don't make it worth it to adopt the 16-inch model. The 14-inch model, though, is definitely what I'm going to be hanging on to, but the 16-inch is gonna move on. So I don't think my wife is gonna give up her LG Gram at this time for this GEEKOM, even though the LG Gram is a little bit older. There's just certain conveniences with that keypad, with the number pad that is too important for her, that it just makes it a deal breaker. And then the trouble for her with the one finger open, the LG Gram does have this notch here, so it makes it easier for it to be opened. The enter key is the correct arrangement, and just those little kind of things make it that it's just too much of a barrier for her to transition over to this machine. This machine will move on for her, but I will be hanging on to the X14 Pro. I do love this machine until I see what the next offering of machines are, but this is going to be my daily driver for a little while. And that is one more thing that I didn't mention, was the price of these devices. Now, I at the time thought it was a very good price, entry level, especially with the way that RAM prices are going and everything, but GEEKOM is selling these on their website for $1,250 for the 14-inch, and I believe it was just below that for the 16-inch at this configuration. So the configuration that I have with the Ultra 9, 32 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte hard drive was going for originally around $1,500, but they're doing a sale, so it went down to like $250. And I can imagine, since this is their first device, and if they come out with a second or third iteration, that the price will continue to go down on these. But with RAM prices as they are now, with storage prices as they are now, and everything being bought up, to have a very kind of high-end quality OLED panel Ultrabook for $1,250, I thought that was a good price. But now with the Core Ultra X9s and X7s and X5s that are just being released by Intel, we'll see how the market kind of fluctuates with these. But other than that, I do feel satisfied with my purchase. Okay, so I'm sorry that I didn't do any benchmarks. There are plenty of other channels that focus on doing benchmarks. I really wanted to give my opinion on a day-to-day with using these machines. That's just how I use them. So if you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. Continue to like, subscribe, give me more engagements. I do have other videos that are going to be coming out, especially with like this, my server and stuff that I do with that. So stay tuned. But other than that, would you get the GEEKOM, especially for this price? Again, stay tuned for more. Thank y'all, and have a good night.